Welcome to episode 97 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And one time, I answered a Craigslist ad for a podcast co-host. And here I am. So I got that going for me.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator. And I've done some deep dives into the Facebook sales and classifieds, Craigslist, all that stuff. And there's no way I would respond to an ad like this. At least I don't think I would.
Would you respond faster if he told you up front about the bathtub? I'll take that as a yes. All right. So joining us today, Brent Terhune is back. And we're so excited you're here, Brent.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, guys. And I am back. I think the previous episode we did was the cabin in the woods. But I will say this time I'm back and I'm ready for some tubby time.
That's why this is the first episode we've ever recorded with all of us in a room together. Your bathroom is beautiful.
We're all in the tub together.
3 men in a tub. They should write some kind of fucking nursery rhyme about this shit.
Instead of 3 men and a baby, it's 3 men in a tub. But I apologize, guys. I do have to retile in here, and I didn't get it done before you came over. So,
I mean, that's probably for the best. So, excuse me. So a little bit has changed since you were last here. We have like a new president, and the comedy world is a little different. We don't have Donald Trump writing all of our jokes for us anymore.
No.
How's that been affecting you, man? Like, is it changing like how you go about writing jokes and stuff, or is it like what's the difference with a different president? Is my question.
Well, if people know me and they knew me from the previous episode, what people would know me for is a satirical character. It's a MAGA rant in your truck type guy, and it was very Trump centric. And now that Trump is gone, I'm finding that there are still Trump people, whether they are Trump people or not. Like there's always going to be some type of guy that will rant in his truck. That's the thing is. That guy's not going away. So I think there's like less things happening, but there's always material that you could comment on. And I've found myself, which I've always done, but now I'm doing more evergreen type videos, or ones that you'd be like, show your dad and he wouldn't get mad about the content, that type of stuff. And I'm happy to not, because I'm not even a political guy. I'm more of a guy that watches people interact with politics, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
The cult mentality of like, if you wear the jersey of your political candidate, that I'm interested in the people, not necessarily the candidate. But yeah, there's definitely like less things happening. And I feel like once, Trump was not in office, then I feel at least people that I know, they were able to take a breath and be like a sigh of relief a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's me 100%. Don knows like what, Don, 99 out of 100 statuses were me mad at Trump for something like every single day, right? Like I would go in and clear my board from that day, like just erase my statuses. And I'd be like, oh my God, how many times did I post? How did he do this many things in a day? And I was absolutely that person. I was just angry all the time. And I mean, there's still a lot going on in the world that angers me, but I don't have that same pressure on me all the time.
But I mean, that also is why you get those ads for like the Trumpy bear still coming onto your TV.
Instead of 3 easy payments, now it's 2 easy payments because I got to clear out their inventory.
They should get together with the titty bear people and, just make like a mashup, and then the angry truck guys could have their titty Trump bear. That'd be great.
You had me at titty bear.
Titty bears are great. Look them up.
Then you could combine it with the My Pillow thing. So you got 3 things that could work together.
I'd like to see an ad where the My Pillow guy suffocates himself, but that's just me. Anyway, as always, my views are my own. But no, man, let's well, I'll have to edit that out. Anyway, let's jump into this a little bit. So you picked Creep, and why don't you tell me a little bit about why you picked it, man?
I picked Creep. I guess, you can watch the big budget horror movies like in It or I don't know what a big budget horror movie recently would be besides like an It with a lot of CGI and stuff. But Creep is very, to me, stripped down. And when you get a low budget stripped down horror movie, I feel like you can get closer to real life. Like this could happen versus an evil clown. So, and I have done my fair share of Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. Hey, let's meet in this parking lot. I'll give you money or vice versa, and we'll go our separate ways. You hope.
Right? There's always you hope.
Yeah.
I like how that's always been a thing. Like even like one time I sold some video games and I'm like, what if they kill me? And there's part of me that's like over video games, and then there's part of me that's like they kill you over way stupider shit than even video games, man. And yet we still take these chances. And I really, that resonated with me in this film because there's so many times that you're like, Aaron, fucking leave, man. And yet it makes perfect sense because of my own interactions,
Just yesterday, I did an exchange, which I haven't done in a while just because of COVID, but it was like in a parking lot, and I was like, look, you got to wear a mask. But I went and bought this. It was a Rob Zombie figure, and it's a McFarlane. So it's and I'm not even like the biggest Rob Zombie fan, but it was $10 versus like I've seen it for $100.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
And I was like, $10, I can do that for sure. Right. So. And then I totally then watched this movie today, and I was like, oh man, I just did that. So that thankfully I was the one who traveled versus him coming to me. But it was always, I've had my fair share. I went to look at some records a couple of years ago, and of course, they're like, oh, bring a friend or tell somebody where you're going. So I brought, my wife, the person that I love the most in this world. So at least if something bad happens, then, she's stuck with me. But I'm looking at these records in this guy's garage, and he's on the computer in his garage, like detached garage. So he's got a setup in there, and his son comes out, and while we're like looking through these stacks of records, him and his son both start practicing with a bow staff in the in the driveway and like doing nunchucks. And
oh my God.
And then for some reason he's like, I've been having computer problems. I'm like, oh yeah, what do you got? And somehow he was like, yeah, I don't use Windows or Apple. I'm a Linux guy. And like, I don't know why. Just him being proud that he was a Linux guy, which I don't even know what that is. To me, the Linux is the dark web. I don't know anything about that. But it was just a combination of Linux and also bow staff practice that I was like, all right, let's hurry up and get out of here.
Yeah, there's like Ninja Turtle practice going on around you.
Yeah. And they were good. They were really good at nunchucks. Usually nunchucks, you're like, something bad's going to happen, but they were good at it.
I'm just seeing this all in my head of like, oh.
And when you picture it, not a sleeve in the bunch.
I just imagine they were both shirtless.
They had the decency to put on a shirt, but no sleeves.
They brought out the bow staff for the negotiations.
They were like, yeah, I know what we said in the ad, but here's what's really going to happen. With the bow staff.
No low balling. I know what I got.
Yeah. You pick up. No trades. Unless you got a four-wheeler. It's always weird. I love to go on Facebook Marketplace or, Craigslist. I go on there, but I feel like that's where the creeps live is Craigslist now, which they always have been. But now people have migrated to Facebook. Like the real creeps go to Craigslist still, but it's one of those things where people if you're looking for a certain thing or you want to get a deal and you're willing to risk, like in the movie, your life, that's where you go.
Oh, man. So was this your weirdest interaction picking something up, or were there weirder ones?
I think that was about the weirdest one. And thankfully, it's usually like, there's always like a hint of like it's a showdown where, I've sold and I've also bought on there, but it's always people like, clearly cautious of like, do you have the thing? And I'm like, do you have the money? And then you do the exchange, and then all the tension goes away, and they're like, "Oh yeah, are you do you like video games too?" And then you become friends after the exchange, but it's that tense thing of like, I'm gonna park a few spaces away in case this goes bad, type thing.
So my worst one, it's not even bad. It's just fucking weird to me. Like I still think about this. This is like 12 years ago, and we were selling one thing. I think it was our like dining room table. I think we got a new one, right? And this guy came and literally like everything in the room. He's like, "How much for the lamp?" And we're like, no, the lamp's not for sale. How much for your scale? And it's like, no, I need to weigh myself to remember I'm fat. What's wrong with you? Like, that's not for sale. And he must have asked us 20 things in the room. Like, how much for that? And I still think about it, and it was so many years ago. It's just very odd.
You should have just gave him a price to see, because it's so weird how he's just asking how much the price of like 30 things. Like, how much do you need?
Well, and then I'm like, how much money you got on you? Because, I mean, what? I'm not going to kill you. Yeah, that's it. Sure. But it's just an odd way to go about life.
It reminds me of the Blues Brothers when he's like, how much for the women, the little girls? We want to buy them.
Oh, man.
I just like this movie. It's clearly like they operated with very little budget. It's two characters, 2.5 characters if you count the person on the phone. Like, it's a very stripped down, and I heard somebody else talk about this on another horror podcast, obviously not as good as this one. And it's the kind of movie that if you were a filmmaker, like with no budget and very little, equipment, you could do this. People can make this type of movie, and it, at least like, from a guy that's creative, makes me be like, oh yeah, I can make a thing that's on Netflix with the stuff that's in my house.
Right.
Definitely. No, and I think that that's such a big part of this. I think like a lot of the joy that I did get from Creep was watching the absolute minimalist way of going about it. Just like everything with it, I was just like, is this like the house they were staying in while filming? Like, did they like get an Airbnb and not even get permits? Maybe. Like, I don't know how far it went, And that's what I liked about it. I like that, like you said, anybody can feel like they can make this. And I think that Rebecca McHenry said it once during a panel we did with her. She was like, you can make a huge budget Cthulhu and you can bring in every elder god and destroy everything and it'll be cool. But if you take an absolute nothing budget and manage to scare me, that's fucking priceless.
Right.
And I think about that a lot. Like, even when I'm writing a scene, like, is this necessary in the budget? Because that automatically determines like who wants to produce or like how much money you need to make it. And the more you can cut it down, if you can get this horror locked into these little things like this, you stand a way better chance of making shit too. So I think overall, it's just such a good thing to put out there for any aspiring person who wants to do this, to realize, put in a little work and a tiny bit of money and you can fucking do this. That's cool.
Yeah. And it obviously, I think the horror comes with, at the beginning of the movie, it starts at one location that turns out to not be even the guy's house, but then it shifts to, he's at, was it Aaron's house, where it's like, that's the kind of horror that would scare me, because the one place you're supposed to feel safe is at home. Mm-hmm. So anytime there's a home invasion, strangers type movie, and it's like, even I can't relax in my own house, because that is the most realistic thing that could happen. Not a clown or whatever, which is still fun and scary, but it's also like, oh, I could wake up and there could be a dude in my house.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Like, what if I woke up tomorrow and Dawn was in my house? No, really though. I notice it a lot at night myself. I tend to stay up really late. My wife goes to bed really early. So she goes to bed at like 9 and I'm up till like 2, right? And when I go to the kitchen, because I'm a fat kid and that's what I do, I have to walk by like the glass window next to our front door. And I always look for shadows. I always look for movement. Like, what the fuck do I think I'm going to do if somebody's standing out there? What am I looking for? And yet I'm terrified just to look. So when you have movies like this that add to that, like that scene where Aaron's like in his bed and you see Joseph pop up in the door behind him and then go back down, like shit like that just adds to that fucking feeling I already have. So I agree, man. That's some terrifying shit.
And just from the jump of this movie, you know, he's answered a Craigslist ad and for $1,000, and clearly, you know, he wouldn't have done the job unless he needed the money, and then later he gets strung along again. Like, that's also I think a great thing about this movie is Joseph knows when to infuse that next carrot to keep him around in the movie. But just from the beginning, you get that weird vibe of this is a guy claiming to have terminal cancer, which is a lie. Like, there's like, oh, I didn't see this text till right now. But then there's like, oh, I have cancer. That kind of lie. You know, right. Big lies, claiming to have a whole family, you know, and then paints the backstory of being in that, whatever the Airbnb thing he rented. He runs up the steps and he's like, oh, never get used to those stairs. Like, that's a thing that you say when that's house has been in your family for decades. Not that you just rented, but it's so well. And I think this movie lends itself. It gets creepier the more you watch it because you know, and I obviously we're doing spoilers, but you know this dude is lying from the jump on your second watch. So to me, I'm watching it from, oh, this guy's having tubby time with a stranger for a kid that doesn't exist with the disease he doesn't have. And you're like, God, the movie's called Creep for a reason, you know?
Well, and on that note, really fast, I didn't mean to cut you off, Don. This will be fast, I promise. But on that note, like, it's so just fucking odd that that's the first thing he goes for. Like, the very first thing is, let's get naked. Like, being naked is your most vulnerable place.
Right.
And it's such a great misdirection of vulnerability. Anyway, what were you going to say, Don?
Oh, no, I was going to say he's disarming him from the beginning. So, you know, when Joseph is giving him that story about cancer and like, hey, this is about my kid because my wife is pregnant and I'm not going to see him. It reminds me of the remake of The Hitcher where Sean Bean's character, spoiler for this one, he makes this comment about having a wedding ring. And, you know, the kids who picked him up, he's like, oh, I wear the wedding ring so people think that I'm not harmful or I won't harm them or I'm not a threat. Because if you see somebody with a wedding ring, you think that somebody else trusts them. So you're not going to look at them as, oh, this person's probably a grifter or just, you know, random murderer or anything like that. This guy has a wife, probably has a family, you know, he's safe. And I just thought the same thing when I'm watching Joseph go through all this stuff, or at least thinking about it after the fact, that he set him up or sets Aaron up to think like there's no problem with this guy. You know, he needs somebody to record him to make these videos for his kid. Maybe he's doing it because he doesn't want his wife to know. It's a surprise. You know, so many things are probably going through his head aside from, hey, I'm getting $1,000 for this. Yeah, it's a little weird that this guy is getting naked because even at that moment, Joseph makes that comment of like where he gets his pants and his underwear like partly way down, and he says, "Oh, we're going to go a lot deeper than this." We're going to go in a lot deeper places than this. So you're just thinking at that moment, like, I know this is weird. I know this is odd, Aaron. You know, hey, I'm taking my armor off. I'm taking all my guard off. Mm-hmm. And here I am. So at that moment, yeah, it is. Oh, shit, you know, this guy's fucking harmless. He's a little weird, but he's harmless.
in that scene, I watched an interview with Mark Duplass, who's Joseph, and I know people are huge fans of Mark Duplass. This is like the only movie in Creep 2 that I know him from, but somebody was like, they asked him, was that a merkin? And he's like, nope, that was all me, all pubes. Because he holds it there for a while, and I'm like, I don't remember seeing his wiener. I say wiener in this movie, but then obviously you don't see it. But just that, like you said, Don, of disarmament of like, oh, I'm gonna get naked in front of you, and it's cool. And he's also like, I used to take tubbies with my dad.
Right.
So, at what age were you old enough to remember being in the tub with your dad? Like, that's weird. But it's also like, this whole thing is weird. So we're not even going to think about that.
It's interesting how he's always trying to make himself vulnerable to make you trust him more. But it works on the audience, too. Mm-hmm. Like if you were watching this the very first time, you don't know who to trust. You're like, is he actually a creep, or like, am I the creep for feeling like he might be? And he's so good at apologizing for everything. Like he'll be like, oh, I know this is uncomfortable, but then he has a really good reason to back it up. And I thought that level of manipulation and juxtaposition of his excuses was just fascinating to watch, and really resonated with like abuse in general and just gaslighting and everything else with that kind of stuff. Like this is such a beautiful example of how it works even on a small scale.
And it's also very it's creepy in that I've met people who are overly nice, and because in comedy, if I was traveling every week, you meet some new people in every city who are either like, people that just show up to a show to see a stand-up show, or people that work for the club, and they're like, okay, here's where you stay in for the week, and you need anything, let me know. And they're overly hospitable, and I get a little cautious because I don't know, I just won't let myself trust that there are nice people in the world, because I see stuff like this where I'm like, don't get sucked into that, because then you'll end up getting hit with an axe or whatever. But it's so weird in my head. I'm like, I won't let people be that hospitable because I just don't trust it. And then eventually you get to know people, and they just turn out to be nice people. But I remember one time I did the show in Erie, Pennsylvania, and these people are like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I always hate that question of like, hey, what are you doing? Because I don't know. What are you doing? Why don't you tell me, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing.
Right.
But they were like, we're going out boating tomorrow if you want to go. And of course I made some other thing up, but I'm like, I don't even know anybody in this town. I'm not going on a boat with strangers. Like this is a horror movie written all over, but it's that weird thing of people being so nice. And I think that's what Joseph is. He's weird, but he's also non-threatening to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we get it even at cons. Like you meet a couple people who are like, oh, let's go to dinner or whatever, and sometimes like you just gel with somebody and it's totally cool. And sometimes it's very awkward and you have to redirect, and it's not even necessarily them. It's just, if something feels off, you got to follow that, because the world is a fucking weird place.
Yeah, we've definitely been at conventions where it's we've had people on our panels where somebody was a little bit too, I guess, nice to them and overly interested in everything that they were doing. And it always takes one person to come over and like, oh yeah, we got to run to this next panel. We got to go across the convention center in like 5 minutes, because you get that sense that like, this person's asking where they're going to eat later. Mm-hmm. And that person doesn't get that might make for a weird situation or make for an uncomfortable situation or possibly a dangerous situation. But yeah, when James's stalkers and groupies show up, I have to pull them aside and say, well, James.
Is that why you guys didn't go out to eat with me at that convention?
Oh man.
I mean, I suggested Steak and Shake. We could have gone anywhere else, but To find out like this, it really hurts.
We know you better now, so next time we're down.
Excellent. then I'll turn on the creep factor.
Yes. So joke's on you. I love that. So, real fast, I just want to make a shout out to my buddy Ian, who I know is listening to this, because I was the creep at con with Ian. Ian kept coming to our panels and I kept talking to him. And then I was like, you should come eat with us. And then they needed a place to stay because their Airbnb fell through for the night. And I was like, oh, I have this rental property down a 1-lane road, man. You should come up to this place. And he was like, what the fuck? And now we're good friends, and he survived the night and everything. But I want to send a shout out because I know somewhere listening to this is Ian, and he's like, yeah, the creepy people at cons. That's you, motherfucker.
I was gonna bring that up, and because I made a joke, and I said after James told me this, is like, here's what's gonna happen. I've seen this horror movie. Either you're gonna kill them or they're gonna kill you. And James is like, well, they needed a place to stay. I was like, I don't trust you, man. Somebody's doing something to somebody.
So yeah. Anyway, I thought about a lot during this film about how this probably resonates with women and their experience with men daily. And I'm sure we'll get into this much heavier, but I really want to point it out to listeners now. Like that whole trust your gut and that weird feeling and somebody asking you 1,000 questions and you're feeling unguarded and you don't know why they're being overly nice or why they're asking about whatever. Like, I just want to say to every woman out there, I can't imagine what the fuck you go through every single day. And I'm sorry. I'm doing the best to teach my boys the other way and to do better myself. And I don't know, man, that's really all we can do is keep calling it out and hoping it gets better, right?
And I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the questions I had, or one of the thoughts that I had when I was watching this. If you changed a couple of things as far as with a gender dynamic, whether it was male, female, or female, because, I immediately thought of single white female watching this. But just the power dynamics, the way that they would relate to each other, the fear factor going up a hell of a lot more. If it was, a female videographer coming to this cabin, it was Joseph, or even it was flipped where Joseph is, it's Josephine, and it's a male videographer, and any number of issues would come up and could be discussed or analyzed that way. But yeah, it definitely makes you consider the creepy behavior that all men, and I will use the all men, that all men can be guilty of, because I've been guilty of it, where I didn't realize what I was doing. It might be well-intentioned, but you know what? That doesn't matter to the person that's the target of it, because they don't know it's well-intentioned. And, there's probably a track record of guys being creepy to them or saying things or asking questions that make them uncomfortable. So whether you're trying to be well-intentioned or not, it doesn't matter. You need to be mindful of boundaries or how something could be perceived or taken.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where it's, this guy found where he lived without ever knowing his address.
Yeah.
Yep. Like that type of weird thing. And you hear stories all the time, like, oh, I was at the store. I was at Target and I got in my car, and then this guy followed me to my house and now he knows where I live, type thing. And like, that happens with a lot of people, but more so I would say it's the guy following a woman, and you're like, God, like, stop being a creep. Like, do you think that's going to make her like you? Like, look, I found your house. Let's go to Applebee's. Like, that's not going to make her like you. So stop being that way. Or like, you see all the time of somebody getting blocked on social media and like, oh, she blocked me on Instagram, so I went to her Twitter. She doesn't want to talk to you, man. Leave her alone.
Yep. And what's funny is people, now that you said that, and then we've discussed this right now, somehow some people still don't understand how Pepe Le Pew's problematic. It's the same thing. Like, if you were to incorporate, because Warner Brothers is like, we're not making any more Pepe cartoons. He's not going to be in the movie. If they were to update it and they were to show it as Pepe has a car and he's following a girl cat that he thinks is a skunk from Target, right? And he's like, "Oh, ma chérie, I thought we had something back there in the home goods aisle," right? That's what it fucking is. That's what it comes down. It's the creepy dude who thinks that, the woman winked at him or liked him, or, oh man, if I only follow her home and let her know that I actually like her, she'll give me a chance. No. And it's the same thing with women anywhere. Like if a woman is at the gym with headphones on or a bus stop or wherever, headphones on or headphones off, leave her alone. Like if she wants to talk to you, she's going to talk to you.
And that's not for women. That's especially for me. If I have headphones on, leave me alone.
I have headphones on right now. Oh. No,
I do too, and I was hoping you guys would take the hint.
But I want to throw out one more really fast while we're talking examples, because I think this is one that men do in conversation and they don't realize how threatening it is. Mm-hmm. One of my really close friends was at the park walking her dog, and she said that 3 guys, while she was there, all used the same line, "Do you live around here?"
Oh.
And maybe that's completely innocent. You're trying to make conversation, but asking a woman where she lives, uncool.
Yeah, especially when you just met. It's you might as well just say, "What's your specific address and your list of fears?"
Right.
Also, which bedroom window is yours? It's really that level of creepy to my friend, and I totally understand why. So, anyway, we can get back to the film. I didn't mean to go down that road, but I think it needs to be said.
That's a good road to go down, because you're talking about safety, security, and peace. And Aaron's peace is disturbed several times, while he's in that cabin with Joseph, but then it's disturbed, even afterwards, as both of you talked about with respect to Joseph following him home, or at least discovering where he lives, sending stuff to him, and then coming to his house and cutting a lock of his hair, which, is creepy in its own right, because as far as Aaron knows, Aaron only knows about the CD being returned in the house. He doesn't know about the hair, which again is it's interesting.
The only thing that I think would have made that even creepier is like if you cut the hair and then you would have. I forgot about this scene, but I expected him to like take a big sniff of his hair.
Yes.
And you're just like, it's already creepy, but then it's also like, I don't think his motivation is sexual. I just think he's a creep, which is also somewhat creepier. Just to be, it doesn't matter who the person is. It's just to be a psychological terrorizer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good term for it. That's exactly what he is.
Well, he even addresses that earlier on when they're on that hike. And, he has that jump scare with Aaron, and he says, "Oh man, if you could see you can't see your face." And he takes the camera and puts it on. He's like, "Oh man, that look that you had, it was pure fear. It was a near death experience. And I bet right now you probably want to kill me." And just going into this whole thing of, he's not sexually getting off, but he's getting excited. He's getting off on this idea of scaring him. Right. But then also getting the reaction. What is going to be his reaction to being scared this way? And of course, at the end of the film, you get a flip of that where he is so delighted that there is no reaction when he attacks him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's remarkable the way that he's able to interact with Aaron. Aaron is responding in the way a person normally would, and he's excited. But again, it also feels like it's getting into the con of the viewer, or conning of the viewer, as far as the actions that Joseph takes.
Just the overall, let's go on this hike, and then he's got this backstory of, hey buddy, me and your mom were told by this lady that works at a taco truck that there's some kind of healing spring, and then he finds the heart rock And it's just like the effort you had to go to like make that story up when there's no kid, there's no cancer. Like you're just weird.
Mm-hmm. He's playing with his prey the entire time. I mean, it's he's got this guy in his web, and he hasn't decided to pounce or eat him yet. You know, it's the driving up of the fear of that character, or at least the fear of Aaron, that he's enjoying, and he hasn't gotten to that point where he's going to kill him yet. He's just having fun with the fear.
That's that scene in the diner when he's like, "Tell me what is a dark secret or whatever you have," and Aaron's talking about peeing his pants, and then Joseph's talking about what do you guys remember what he said?
He says, "I was like the taking your picture, right?"
Oh yeah, like he shows him from a distance, showing pictures of Aaron, just. That you would never know that he was there. Just a weird, like voyeuristic, like I don't know. Yeah, again, in hindsight, you could say, "Why didn't you leave?" But again, he's like, "I have some money. I'm going to give you some money." Like keeps him on the hook the whole movie.
Well, and what's extra weird about that part for me? Okay, number one, he's really touchy all the time. He's always touching Aaron in some way. Yeah, and he touches him here, but he shows him these pictures, and then he apologizes, and he says this really fucking weird thing. He says, basically, "I wouldn't have done this if I'd known you then the way I know you now." It's been like an hour. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And that was the first place for me where I was really like, oh yeah, definitely the creep, because like he's playing into this familiarity, but it doesn't exist.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, the whole movie, he's like, you're my friend. Like, no, dude, I'm here for $1,000. And maybe afterwards we will be acquaintances, but I'm not going to ask you to Papa Bear's or wherever we went to eat. Had you guys seen this movie before I suggested it?
I had not.
You had not?
It had kept popping up, I guess, on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and I'm like, all right, I'll get to it. Because I typically think if a movie has, if it keeps coming up, I'm like, I've got to see it because it's come up, and I'm glad that you recommended it. Or else it probably would have stayed in the queue or just, cycled out of the queue or at least out of the, I guess, the monthly
streaming service.
Yeah.
And James, you said you had seen it or no?
No, I had not. No.
Okay. So what did you guys think of it? Just a thumbs up or down?
I'd give it a thumbs up. In fact, I did on Netflix when I was done with it because it wasn't what I was expecting. Because James, he'll tell you, he goes for spoilers. It wasn't what I
spoilers. Yes.
It wasn't what my expectation was from the description, because I don't even think it put it as a found footage film, which I don't even know if I would put it as that, because it almost seems like it's a Memento home video rewatching that this guy put together. But I liked it as far as the execution. And it's definitely one of those things, like my wife didn't watch it with me, but I'm going to have her watch it, and I'm going to do kind of the asshole thing where I'm sitting there like watching her face to see her react to things, where I'm kind of like, I know what's going to happen. I liked it. And even at the end, I told James, I texted him and I said, I liked the sound that the axe made when it hit Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I like that, because that was the most chilling part for me of this movie. It wasn't any of the jump scares or jump scenes, or even, probably the closest would have been when Joseph shows up outside the door, or the sliding glass door, or the window. Cause that was creepy, but it wasn't fully scary to me. But the sound of that axe hitting his head, it wasn't overly enhanced. It wasn't some ridiculous, audio to go along with it. There wasn't any type of music that was playing at the same time to drive the scene. What drove the scene was the silence, and then the silence then being broken by that thud. And I was just like, shit.
And then all he does is just slump over to the right.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice touch. Like, he doesn't even fall all the way off the bench. Like, I don't know. I thought that was great.
Go ahead, James.
So in answer to your question, I would give it mostly a thumbs up. Like I told you guys before we recorded, the jump scares really pulled me out of it. Normally, I'm a very jumpy person who reacts to every jump scare, and they were pissing me off in this one instead of feeding into it. And I felt like every time I started investing in the story, they would do this, and then I was mad again. And but overall, like, thinking about it later, like, if you had asked me right after I watched it, I would have been like, what the fuck was that? And now, like, I've had a few days to think about it, and it's really stayed with me. And the more I think about it, the more I like it. But the thing I love about it, what's his name? Mark Duplass, is that right?
Yeah, Joseph.
The only thing that I knew him from was The League. And and he's absolutely nothing like that. And so I'd never seen him like this. And I thought his performance just really just drives this whole film. And it really felt kind of like a play to me, you know, like Scare Me has that same feeling, like this could be on a stage and that one performance would drive the whole thing for me. And I thought that was a really nice thing with this film, was just his performance and his the way he portrays Joseph.
Yeah.
He's very good at just being that, like, ambiguous creep nice guy until he's a creep, you know. And that with the jump scares, James, I chose it just mostly to torture you.
It worked so well. It was no.
do you think that, like, with the jump scares, this guy, it's like you said, Don, he's getting off on him being scared, so it's like little teases before he actually brings the true terror.
Yeah, it's that full, I'm going to play with you until I'm tired of playing with you.
The thing I was thinking about, because you guys kind of mentioned that before we went on the air, and the thing it made me think about is it kind of wears down Aaron's defenses as well. Because you get to the point where you're like, yeah, I'm creeped out, but it's because this asshole keeps doing this, you know? Or like, I'm on edge because I don't know when he's going to do that again. And that probably, if this was real, I would assume that would detract you from that real instinct of something's wrong. And so in that way, I think it's great, but watching it pissed me off.
All right. Before I forget this, I got to bring this up because we're just talking about the hike and everything. The carving that Joseph made in the rock, and this is just something I thought about probably in the last hour. So he makes that carving in the rock, you know, near the heart rock, but he makes a carving, or I guess a drawing of J and A, and then draws a heart around it. Now his wife's, or at least the wife that he claims, is named Angela. But Aaron's first initial is also A, and then he has this nice speech, or at least video that he sends, that he's talking about wolves don't know how to love, and wolves are in love, but, you know, they sometimes, you know, kill when they're trying to love, but they don't know how to express it. You know, he starts giving this whole thing, this spiel about it, right? Sends him a locket and all these things. So I immediately thought, I'm like, this is a little weird, man. Maybe he's writing Joseph and Aaron here, and he's kind of giving you a clue, either as a viewer or a clue for Aaron, that something else is going on here, but Aaron's not paying attention to all the clues. Because I immediately thought, I'm like, yeah, his wife's name is Angela, but what if he intentionally picked, well, there would no be what if. I'm feeling as though he intentionally picked a woman's name that has the same starting letter so he can play that game.
You know, what's weird about that for me is I didn't even make the connection to Angela. Like, I just went to Joseph and Aaron, and I was like, that's fucking weird. Like, yeah. Like, if I was just hanging out with Brent, I wouldn't do that, you know?
And then to take it even further with the scene of, like, can I make a confession about the Peach Fuzz mask, of, like, the real reason he has this mask? Right. First off, I don't buy that he got it at the 99-cent store, because that mask is pretty high end.
No shit. I was like, man, where do you live? I'm going to that place.
just that the creepy story of the internet was slowing down at my house, and my coworker said it could be there's too many searches in the browser. What just that whole story, again, when you rewatch it, you're like, all this is bullshit, but it sounds so real. Like it's just very, again, creep factor.
Yeah, and then the excuse that he gives, like his wife was watching, bestiality stuff or animal porn, and says, "Oh, I put on the mask and I broke into the house and I had sex with my wife, and she loved it, and I'm ashamed. I raped my own wife." And even if you're Aaron, listening to the story, if I had heard this story, I'd be like, I find it hard to believe that she wouldn't know that it was you in a mask. First off.
Yeah.
I mean, or she wouldn't at least talk to you about it later. Like, hey, we had some real funky animal sex last night, lover, something like that. Right. But there are all these moments where, as both of you talked about, Joseph is so good at giving you a bullshit story that you think in your head, yeah, it's bullshit. But then you think, oh, it's so stupid, though. It can't be. It has to be real. Because it doesn't make sense. Like, why would he tell me about, putting on a mask and having sex with his wife? That's not something that you would tell a stranger to impress them.
Mm-hmm.
That's something like, I'm dying and I have to get this out. I have to tell somebody this story. So, it fits his alibi. And
you got to wonder, like, at the end, you see the tape library of, and I paused it to see, I think it started in 94 and he has up to, I don't know if it's the movies in real time. Obviously they had an iPhone. So whatever iPhone it was, like he's been doing this since 94. Mm-hmm. You got to wonder if that's the same pitch that he gives all people. Like, oh, I got cancer, terminal cancer. I'm making a thing for my kid. Or if he switches it up, like this guy's clearly got a bit that works. Is he changing it up or is he given the same, wolf mask snuck in the window type thing for every situation? Does he get bored with this and now he's got to find a new way to lie to people?
That's a good question. Because I was wondering the same thing when I saw those videotapes. Like, I'm sure he caters it to whoever's showing up. Mm-hmm. But I would have loved to have heard that phone call. Because at the end, he's responding to somebody else talking to somebody who's responded to an ad. But I would have loved to have heard that first phone call between he and Aaron, where he's, explaining like, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. Hey, you can be here. It's 8 hours of work, $1,000. Cool. See you, up in my cabin by the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see the attitude.
And it, like, just the small part of the house that you saw him living in, I'm like, that's not a small house. Like, what does this guy do to make money? And then also, like, then this is his weird hobby of luring Craigslist filmmakers to creatively kill them. And it's all, he went from VHS to DVD. This guy's switched formats. He's been doing it so long.
That's a nice touch.
I would have been really impressed if there was a Betamax in there.
It's got a couple laser discs. So if it was me, if I was him, I mean, I'm clearly not totally in his head, but I would think you'd keep the cancer story because that establishes the vulnerability, and it also tests, like, you get that instant boundary test at the beginning with the tub, right? So I would think that up until then, that's like the set theory, right? But I would like to believe, and I have no way of knowing one way or the other, that he switches up like the mask or the stories and that kind of stuff, because that is what would keep it interesting to you, right? Otherwise, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. And how long can that possibly last? I would also like to think that he switches up the weapon. Like, I mean, in this one, when Aaron arrives, he sees the axe at the very beginning,
Right.
And I would like to think that maybe that switches up. Maybe sometimes it's a knife or a gun or whatever. The one odd thing I'll point out is I think it's kind of great that the big bad wolf is the one who gets to use the axe on someone. Never saw that in the fairy tale.
Yeah, and just having the brand new axe in the wood at the very beginning, like he's foreshadowing and he knew that Aaron was going to drive by the lake, because I paused it at the very beginning. I'm like, well, that's the lake. They eventually, like George or whatever, they end up at the beginning. Like, it's so weird how he plans it out to like give you a little bit of what's going to happen. Obviously, there's an axe. Nothing really good happens with an axe unless you're chopping wood. Like, it never ends well. So just that foreshadowing of, oh, there's an axe and it's brand new. It's not rusty. It's not, and then you get the pictures of, oh, I was being weird and creepy and was watching you. Like, there's so many signs of, like, you should have got out of here. But obviously he didn't. Like, again, like you said, just playing with his victim before he gets you.
Well, and he clearly, I don't know the exact wording here, but he says something like, when you saw that axe, did you think I was going to stick it in your head? Like, he straight says what he's going to do. And I thought that was so weird, because, like, that's not a normal conversation topic. Like, if you came to my house and you saw, like, my buck knife sitting around, I wouldn't be like, hey, when you saw that, did you think I was going to jam it in your eye?
Well, I wasn't. But now I am.
That was oddly specific.
And I do want to talk about, Don, you were talking about that found footage thing, and to me, like, I don't consider this because it doesn't feel like a found footage thing, because they're clear, like, edits. It's not like Birdman where the camera has to move throughout the whole thing, or Blair Witch where it's like, oh, we got to walk here, so I have to carry the camera. There are clear cuts in the movie, which if you're gonna do a found footage movie, that's how I prefer you to do it. I know it's like you got to hold the camera to get to one scene or the other, but just cut it, because I know it's a dumb vehicle for the movie. I got to hold this camera the whole time, But that's the thing that you kind of accept with a found footage movie.
I absolutely agree. Like, if somebody found all this, they would edit it into something cohesive. They wouldn't just say, here's 62 hours of pointing at the ground while people walk, And I feel like a lot of found footage movies have trouble with those transition scenes. They have to come up with dialogue, and they have to try to make stuff interesting because, we need to show it because it's on camera. And it's always where I fall off and don't give a shit about the film.
Well, and what's fun as far as the whole idea of not having to show everything is that moment where they actually have a fight, and where Aaron wants to leave, Joseph isn't going to let him leave, and he puts on the mask and he does that weird creepy dance on the door. And the next scene that you get is basically Aaron explaining what happened, and he's like, oh yeah, I had to get out of there, I had my car towed and blah blah blah. So you're getting the idea that he got back home safely. And as a viewer, and especially a viewer of this, once you see the way that the edits are going, you understand you don't need to see them fighting to understand he got out of the house. I mean, it's been established. All he says is, hey, we scuffled, we struggled, whatever, I got out of the house. And again, thinking about it after watching the film and understanding where the film goes and what Joseph's game is, you just see that again as part of Joseph's game of, oh, he got away. Oh, no. Whatever am I going to do? Because I don't think that Joseph put up much of a fight. I think it was an issue of he was blocking the door. Aaron charged him. And I don't know, he fell to the floor. Aaron got out of the house and got away to where, Aaron now does feel safe again, that he's at home. And as you said earlier, Brent, the idea of the place you're supposed to feel safest is in your home. And now that he's there, this is where Joseph can now attack to take that safety and that security away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where then you see the scene of him, like, putting in a deadbolt or whatever he was doing with the drill, and like clearly adding more things to his house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that thing where it's like, now the thought of, now you know that he was at your house once is, it's always on your mind of like, is he out there right now? Maybe, but maybe not. But that's that psychological thing of like, now I'm in your head. I could be out there and I could be not out there, but it's the same effect on your mind.
Exactly.
I was going to point out the other two of my favorite shots of the movie was the one where I think they're coming back from the diner and they're walking up, and again he's like, okay, I think I'm going to head out here. He's like, oh, I was going to pour you a whiskey, and just that shot of him standing in front of the lights, it's the cover of the movie, but it's so ominous, such a great shot from cinematography aspect of, I don't even know what you just have to see it to know, but I just love that shot of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was the shot from the car at Lake George. Just that shot of like, it was very funny when he walks up with the trench coat and puts the wolf mask on and has the axe. And then it's if you rewatch it, which I noticed today, it's a very cartoony way to sneak up on somebody, because he like raises the axe way up high before he even gets there. Like, it was very like, I don't know, like it was Looney Tunes kind of thing, but it's very funny for a scene where a guy catches an axe to the head.
No, I noticed that as well. I noticed that as well. I was like, why is he walking this way? And the answer is simple: to entertain himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what all this is about, right? Like, just fucking entertaining himself.
And at the same time, like, I was thinking like, okay, he stops off at Joseph's house and to leave whatever at the door. Has he got 3 other of these going on at the same time? Like, is he making stops on that night? Like, oh, I got to stop at so-and-so's house and drop this off. Like, has he got like a locket guy does he send a locket to all these people? Like,
that would be kind of amazing. Like, he's just going house to house.
But you gotta imagine, like how many people. I was gonna say, you gotta imagine, how many people didn't bite, and the idea of he wasn't getting entertained by them anymore. So, it would make sense he would have like 2 or 3 going on at the same time, possibly, or just one's not working out and he moves on to the next one. I mean, it's a great. At least thing to think about, where he's enjoying what he's doing, but there might be some people that don't do it for him, and he's kind of like, I don't want to waste my kill because you were boring.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be in. Oh, go ahead,
James. No, go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, I thought it would be kind of interesting if the point was to push Aaron to attack him.
Oh.
Like, I thought that would be like a nice added bonus to this. And I haven't seen Creep 2. I don't know how that plays into the mythology here, or whatever you want to call it. But I thought that'd be a cool added bonus. Like, if you just had to push them to their breaking point and then they attack you, and then that's what he gets off on and kills them during.
Mm.
Well, and I was going to say there's a Creep 2, and besides Joseph, the other person is a woman in this one. But it has been a while since I've seen that one. I wanted to rewatch it for this, but I didn't have time. But again, you get the female factor as opposed to the 2 guys.
Right.
I'll have to check that out and see how I feel about the differences, because like in my head, it would play very differently. And I don't know, like maybe again, I haven't seen it. Maybe it doesn't play that differently, but I'm actually interested in that.
I was also thinking, what if, in your head while you're watching that scene at the lake, you're saying, get up, turn around. Obviously, he's right behind you, the same as every horror movie. They're always right behind you. What happens then if he turns around and you're probably going to see an axe under a trench coat? Like, where does it go from there?
That'd be kind of great. I'm leaving. You're clearly trying to kill me. He's running after him, trying to swing it, but the axe is too big. You know.
Oh, Peach Fuzz.
Tripping over things because he's wearing that mask. It becomes a very different film. No, but at the very end, he talks about how Aaron never looked back at him and like how he trusted him, or I don't know the exact words, but I think that is such a summary of all of us. Not all the time, but at least at some point in our lives where we had a million reasons not to trust someone and we just kept doing it, And that part really resonated with me. I don't necessarily like the delivery at the end. I think it's a little weird and almost not needed. Like, I think I would have liked it better if it just left off with him slumped over to the right. But there's something so universal about that, about how, we all say, like, why don't abused women leave? Or we say, why doesn't my friend leave this with all the red flags? And I think that's so universal that we all fucking do it at some point.
Mm.
Yeah, looking from the outside in or hindsight, you're always like, oh, I should have left. But again, you always hold out hope, and you like to think the best of people, and unfortunately, sometimes that's the worst thing to do.
Right, definitely.
And I think you could have, at the end, maybe. He's maybe not heard, like if you got the shot of him getting the axe in the head and then it walks away, maybe you could have heard the other phone call that he took at the end of the movie and maybe cut that part out. But I do like seeing, oh, this is the thing that he's been doing for years is,
that's true.
Conning people into, then, there's supposed to be a Creep 3. Is it going to be Facebook Marketplace? What's his new grift? How's he going to trick you into getting, coming to whatever retreat?
It's one of those things where it's like, buy 6 of these classes online for $20, and in class 6 he kills you. You never learn Photoshop.
Class.
Yeah.
No, they're obviously going to go to an axe throwing place.
It could mix with Behind the Mask for the sequel, and they could do a team up. I don't know, though, man. There's something about this that the scariest thing in the whole fucking movie for me was something that isn't normally scary to me, and I knew it was coming, and it was still that gross moment of no, and it's when Aaron's been on the phone with Angela, and he comes back. And Joseph is gone. And I don't know why this particular one affected me the way it did. But I was 100% invested in Aaron's feeling of where the fuck did he go, And I don't feel like they did anything differently with this. So I'm just going to chalk it up to the great performance from Mark, whatever his name is.
Mark Duplass.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then also he's like talking about death on the back porch, and you also got to wonder how much of this is the Benadryl talking, like, or whatever. Like, he's still somehow he's all drugged up with probably a high dose of Benadryl, but he's also maintaining the care. He's able to gyrate his hips with a wolf mask on.
Maybe he's like that guy in The Princess Bride, and he's been building up an immunity for years, and now the Benadryl doesn't actually affect him.
Yeah. I've been microdosing Benadryl for years, Aaron.
Inconceivable.
And also the other thing I was going to point out, I just like that it's a low-budget movie that doesn't seem low budget, and also this movie is quick. It's 70-something minutes.
Right.
Like, I am, I'm all for a long movie when it needs to be a long movie, but I find that a lot of times it doesn't need to be a long movie.
Well, yeah, especially with something like this. I mean, you got the 2 characters in the film. You've got the story itself. I mean, this could have been, I think I mentioned Host earlier. This could have been even on the shorter side, and I think you would have the same impact, or maybe even a larger impact if it was, I don't know, like a 55, 58-minute movie. But but I think you still need those creepy moments to really drive home as an audience that's watching the first time, to drive home that this guy, like something is going on with him, especially when you get that phone call when Aaron has the phone call and the person's saying like, oh, he's very disturbed. You need to leave right now. And then start carrying on to where he has left and realizing he's not even safe after he's left. There was no safe moment where he could have left, to the point where, Joseph is in his house. Joseph is outside watching him, and even with that moment where he knows that somebody's outside, or at least thinks that somebody's outside, my first thought was like, why the fuck would you go outside? And if you do go outside, why didn't you lock your door? Because I was expecting Aaron to be in the house waiting for him, like naked in the tub, or something to kill him somehow. I was expecting it to go a different way, but Aaron's like, oh, damn raccoons. That would have been my last thought at that moment. Like, I wouldn't have been thinking about the raccoons. I would have been thinking about this creepy person who has been sending me stuff. And it's, hey, I'm not going outside because it's dark out. I don't want to get caught up in this. I'm done. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one other thing I wanted to add before I forget about it. I love how the police, when Aaron makes that phone call to report Joseph doing all this weird stuff, they basically like laugh at him. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize with when people are reporting stalking, abuse, things like that, that they don't always get the help. So when people say like, why didn't you call somebody? Why didn't you do something like this? Or, oh, they should have called, or they should have done X, Y, and Z. A lot of times those people do call and they don't get any help. And I think that was good to include it with Aaron's situation, where he calls and he gets frustrated because he's like, oh, I'm glad you think this is a big joke. And just to see that frustration play into it as well, where you've got real world issues coming into this in what could be a real world situation or real life situation for many people.
Yeah, it's that crying out for help, and then nobody takes it seriously. Like, and even like you mentioned, Don, where he's like, no place was safe. It was kind of, after you left the mummy's tomb, that you're still cursed, or you watch the videotape, it's still going to be 7 days before you get it. Like it's kind of that type of thing, but with a real person, which is, again, creepier to me.
I think that's one of the real advantages of minimalist horror. It really shows how much scarier humans are than monsters. And like you talked about the creepy clown in It or things like that. And I don't know, man, like, yeah, that stuff freaks me out. But I am absolutely terrified wondering who I live next to or who's standing next to me in the grocery store. Like sometimes maybe it's because I'm a horror writer and I'm paranoid and scared of everything. But like I will literally stand in a long line and like make a backstory in my head for the person standing next to me. And I don't know if anybody else does that, but it gets creepy really fucking fast. And minimalist horror like this really just points out how, not that the news doesn't do the same thing, but how this crazy shit is going on in the world around us at all times. And we don't even have any idea. It could be happening next door,
Definitely.
Yeah, it could have been, Joseph was showing up and never making himself known. Like, he could have just been watching Aaron and he would have never known. Like, that still creepy without him knowing.
God, that's almost weirder.
Yeah. Like with him cutting the hair and he never knew, Yeah. I will say that the one thing I don't like about the movie is it's anytime there's cell phones, it's problematic. But also, you got what you needed out of the call, and then it somehow cuts out. Like, I was like, oh, just have the phone die. It's the same thing. If you're not going to have him use the cell phone later in the movie, I just don't like when the call is 100% clear and then static. It doesn't happen anymore, But I get you got to have it to move the movie along.
Do you think that Angela's in on it? Like, is she there purposely to make like just hear me out for a minute. I'm just gonna go on this possible tour. So you have Aaron's or Joseph's phone. He's run down the battery because we're gonna go with your battery killing instead, right? So he's down to 2%. And Angela knows exactly when to call, setting up this, no, my brother's dangerous and you need to get out. And then you go back and he's gone. Like, I think there's a really strong indication that she's an accomplice. What do you guys think of that?
That could be a different Craigslist ad. If I call you from this phone, this is what I need you to say. Here, I just Venmoed you $100.
It's a prank.
That'd be
just say that.
Oh man, that would be cool. I think that'd be a great addition to this.
Yeah, it's one of those where how disturbed is this dude? And if you know he's disturbed, why haven't you done anything about it? But then again, you could have had the thing, oh, I told the cops, but they didn't give a shit.
But yeah, I do agree that this problematic cell phone is a big problem here. Like, it is. It's just too clear, and then it goes to absolute distorted craziness for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of movies are that way, and it's just...
They are. Yeah, it's just so cheap.
Yeah, just, again, he wasn't going to use the phone later, so just have it die. But I did watch some interviews and stuff, and they said they did 6 or 7 takes of each scene, and this movie could have ended very differently. So I think they reshot and had their outline, but they improv'd a lot of it. So maybe they didn't think about that till post, or, again, to me, it just, I know that's what happens in the movie, so it can move along. Mm-hmm. So I don't think about it too much, because I'd rather just enjoy it than nitpick. But we are, talking about a movie for longer than the movie went on. So,
And nitpicking is kind of my thing. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's always just like I don't mind big things that are hard to fix, right? But when something has an easy fix, then it bothers me that they didn't go for it. So, I don't know.
It's understandable. Of course, one of the things that we'd like to talk about, or with respect to these films, is, what other films are there that are like this film? Or if this film was something you enjoyed, what's something else that would kind of be in that same palette? So, Brent, you are the guest, so I will start with you as far as any films that come to mind with respect to with Creep.
Yeah, there's, again, we talked about it earlier, but Creep 2, it's been a little while. I'm going to rewatch this probably after after we record this, obviously. But Creep 2, again, deals with Joseph and a female character. And I do remember it being as good or not better as the first one. So, which is rare for a sequel to be, as good at least. Yep. So there's Creep 2, and I again, it's those movies where it's kind of true life. This could happen. There's The Strangers. I don't even know if you guys have talked about that movie on here or not.
I forgot about that one. Yeah,
we have not.
The Strangers, and that's a little more confined as far as they're just in the one house. But again, no real reason that they're doing this other than it's fun, and then with The Strangers, I think in the movie they say next time it'll be easier. So that's going to be a series of home invasions that they're setting up, a lot like Joseph. I also had The Gift. Have you guys seen that one?
Yeah, damn, that's 2 off my list.
Oh, your list is 20 movies long. It'll be fine.
I think it is 20, so yeah.
Okay, mine's much shorter. But The Gift, I like the idea of somebody being relentless. Again, my favorite horror movie is Halloween. So Michael Myers is just showing up places. So I like the idea of just being relentless, showing up, following, lurking. if you have good lurking in your movie, I probably like it. So just hanging out in the background for no real reason. And then also the movie Ma with Octavia Spencer.
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. All right, Don, go for it.
Yeah. No, James, go ahead. please.
All right, fine. Oh, what do I got on my list here? Let me look really fast. All right, so I already brought up Behind the Mask, Leslie Vernon earlier, but I really think that it has a lot of stuff in common with this, and I think that that's it'd be an interesting double feature. I'm gonna go way back to 1992 for a really weird film called Man Bites Dog.
Oh,
and if you haven't seen that, I don't want to ruin it, but it's very in line with this. Like, there's even scenes like sitting in the cafeteria, and like it reminded me a lot of that. Buried?
I've seen that. I add it to my list to watch.
Nice. Yeah, Buried with Ryan Reynolds, where he's just like in a coffin the whole fucking movie. And I'm just throwing that in for the minimalist horror thing going on, because I'm absolutely fascinated by people that can, like, I don't think that movie always works, but if you can get a full movie out of one set, basically, like, I'm always fascinated by that. So
was that the sequel to Ryan Reynolds and Undertaker Buried Alive match?
Yes. That's right. All right, Don, give us your 220 top movies. No,
I've only got 215. All right, so I'm going to go with some, a classic one, which would be Taxi Driver, for some of the same aesthetics, some of the same issues that are going on there. And I guess the 2019 remake of Taxi Driver, but people know it as Joker.
I like both movies, Taxi Driver, both kinds of movies, Taxi Driver and Joker.
The Crush with Alicia Silverstone, Fatal Attraction, Single White Female I mentioned. I can't read my own writing. Oh, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Oh.
Nice. Fear with Mark Wahlberg. Sleeping with the Enemy. Friend Request. Hush, which I think Hush is a heavily underrated film.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to give anything away, but it all takes place in one cabin in the woods, and it gets into sensory issues, gets into you got some good lurking in that movie. For dark horror comedies, Cable Guy. The Secret Obsession. I think that might still be on Netflix. Night Clerk. 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Good. That's definitely Yeah,
I got my wife to sit and watch it, and she was like, "What the hell?" Like, she thought it was going to be a comedy, and I'm like, "Nope, not happening."
Yeah, I rented that when I was like 13 years old, and I'm like, I like Robin Williams. I'm a comedian. That'll be funny. And I was like, what is this? He's bleeding from the eyes.
Let's see. I mentioned The Hitcher.
Hang on, I have to know. So did the movie influence your comedy or not?
Yeah, my closer is I bleed from the eyes. It's very 1 Hour Photo Halloween 2 inspired.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I got 13 Cameras, which is another good one. And then one of my favorites, High Tension.
Nice.
I think it came out in 2002, 2003. It's still in my top 10. Like, it's going to be hard for that one to get kicked out.
I would say Secret Window too. I think is a good one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You stole my wolf mask.
Secret Window was one of those that it was a short story that I absolutely adored, and so I think it's one of those things where nothing could have lived up to how it was in my head. So for a long time, I didn't really like it that much. And then I rewatched it a couple of years ago, and I thought it was pretty good. So we should cover that someday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I will come back.
Well, very cool, man.
Hold you to that.
Absolutely.
No,
and just come back next week. It'll just be the Brent show now.
Let's do it. I'll take over with my guests, James Sabata and Don Guillory.
Wait, do I get weeks off then? That sounds amazing.
No weeks off.
All right, so let's bring it back to you, man. Where can we find you online, and what do you have going on?
BrentComedy.com is my website for all the links to my social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And I also do a couple podcasts of my own. One is called The Field Trip with Brent Terhune. That is topic-centric. So our latest episode is craziest radio promotions or giveaways. So you ever want to drink a cup of piss for Motley Crue tickets, guys?
Oh, my God.
So that was definitely one of the things that we talked about. I don't know if you guys are Crew fans, but I got a tall boy full of urine for you.
I am, but no, not that much. Definitely not.
They're bad seats. You want to reconsider? And then my other show is called The Cafeteria with Johnny LaQuasto. He was an announcer for WWE. And Ryan Niemiller, he got third place on America's Got Talent. 3 comedians. And just the topic that we recorded that will be out probably this Friday. So if you're listening to this, it's already out. But my topic that I brought to the table was weird Craigslist or Facebook marketplace interactions, which was inspired by my Rob Zombie figure purchase. So
that's amazing.
That's The Cafeteria. New episodes every Friday.
That's fantastic.
And are you still doing Cameo?
Cameo. I just recently had one for a 9-year-old kid. He's turning 9. Shout out to Ryan. He loved my video of the premises. I got the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, and then I had a puppet grow on my arm. So his mom, I think it was his mom or dad, messaged me and says, this is his favorite one. So I had the puppet pop up mid Cameo and say, it's okay, just get the vaccine, then we can be friends. That kind of thing. I've done one for a 16-month-old kid. Like the parents were like, this is a time capsule. Please tell us what 2020 is like. So I did
whole
thing for this baby, and maybe I'll get a message in 15 years being like, hey, thanks for the cameo or whatever. So those are kind of cool. I get to yell at your friends and call them beta male soy boys.
And look forward to Brent in Creep 4, which is all about Cameo. And
you stole my story.
You stole my puppet. As always, it's been great having you on the show.
Yes. So if people are listening to me because I'm on this, go back and listen to old episodes because they're really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I always appreciate that because you send me messages and you're like, oh, I listened to this episode. And I don't know. I love any feedback. So even if somebody like totally fucking hates it, like send me something. Cause sometimes I'm like, I know how many downloads we get. How does nobody fucking leave me any feedback? So feel free to be like, tell James Sabata to shut the fuck up and leave me those comments.
If anything, screenshot it and tag him, be like, garbage. At least you're getting interaction, guys. At least you're getting the...
You send me that with garbage, I'm going to respond, fucking raccoons.
Goddamn raccoons.
And I'll see it, I'm like, eh.
I've heard worse.
I've said worse about myself. Kick up your work. Anyway, I suppose we'll let you go for the night, man. But thank you again for being here.
Cool. Good talking to you guys.
For everyone else, as always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm outside of your window.
And we'll see you next week here at thenecronama.com.